And a huge welcome to everybody from both the Linaro community and the Ubuntu community. Two great communities, one great conference, and one big mission, which is free software universally available on a deadline. Some stats. I saw an article congratulating and wishing everybody in Ubuntu happy birthday the other day for Ubuntu's 7th birthday. So we get a birthday every year, of course, but I think 7 is special, right? In our industry, in our game, 7 is forever. It's not dog years, it's internet years. So we're all grown up now, and looking out into the room there, I really see the evidence of that, the professionalism and process that leads to the platform we ship every 6 months is extraordinary. At least 20 million users in 240 countries, 80 different languages. You know, Ubuntu has become an extraordinary phenomenon in the world today. ARM is a little bit older, billions of devices, and increasingly every single one of those devices is capable of running a first-class operating system, just like Ubuntu. So, two great communities coming together to celebrate what we've done and to look to the future. So that's what I want to do very briefly, celebrate a little bit some of the milestones in the last 6 months since we met in Budapest, talk a little bit about the challenges that we face in this week and in this cycle, the opportunities that we face in this week and in this cycle, and look a little ahead to 1404, our next big LTS. So one of the key things that people have always said we have to get right in the free software world is the ability to engage with developers, make it really easy and straightforward for developers to target a platform and to deliver their software to users. And I think we took a huge step forward with that in 11.10 with developer.ubuntu.com, which was an extraordinary effort by a very diverse team, community folks, canonical folks. I just want to shout out to them and say thank you very much. I know it was an incredible amount of work, but you've absolutely put a flag in the ground, so well done to you guys. So we have much tighter docs for developers. This is a starting point both for free software developers and for commercial ISVs. And for them, for the commercial ISVs, it's a nice easy on-ramp onto free software platforms, right? Which is really important for us to broaden the number of ISVs targeting the free world. Developer.ubuntu.com is a start. Ultimately, we need to develop a full developer experience, right? For project creation, tools, and distribution. But I think developer.ubuntu.com is a first-class start. After developers have built their software, they need to publish them. So there was another big milestone, I think, which was the apps portal, which allows people to deliver their software straight to end users, right? Uploading software through the apps portal puts that software in a queue and ultimately makes it available directly to end users. So we have done an extraordinary job of building this community around the core OS, right? The core and Motu. And this really complements that. This allows an ISV to be totally focused on their application, to deliver their application, to make sure that their application is up to date, to respond to feedback from users. This interface over here lets them track their downloads and track sales if they're selling the software commercially, which is really important. So again, to the folk who put this together, thank you, and very well done. But lastly, the final piece of the puzzle is, of course, the software center. And that took a huge leap forward in 11.10. The interfaces come together beautifully. We now have ratings and reviews. It's exploding in terms of the amount of use of the system. We're crowdsourcing all of that insight as to what really works well, what doesn't work well. This is phenomenally valuable for developers and phenomenally valuable for the platform. So again, to the team who worked on the Software Center, I know we had many community contributions to this. Michael, of course, Matthew, and Steve, well done, and thank you very much for that effort. So it's great that we have an app store, but ultimately the future is about the whole portfolio of services. And the Ubuntu One team made took leaps and bounds in 11.10. not only did Ubuntu One itself greatly improve, both in terms of the quality and performance of the synchronization services that are being offered, but the integration with the platform really took off. So you might have noticed that a couple of other operating systems have started thinking about client services. iCloud finally released. But I think it says something that this team has essentially put a free software platform a little ahead of the curve and a little ahead of the major proprietary platforms. That's a competitive advantage that we have to maintain. So thank you very much and well done. And particularly well done on this milestone, which was Ubuntu One for Windows, right? So we had, in the month that this released, we had 110,000 new users of Ubuntu One. 25,000 of them had never used Ubuntu before. 25,000 of them are coming to this platform just because of Ubuntu One for Windows. So that's been a huge amount of work, but I think it's a very significant milestone, and I just wanted to shout out to the folks involved and congratulate them. So in addition to all of those sort of core applications, we also had some really nice sizzle in the platform itself. Charlene, who leads the design team at Canonical, regularly brings folks together who are recruited essentially off the street. They're not Ubuntu users, they have no prior affiliation, they have no agenda or axe to grind, they simply are technology users who fit a broad demographic profile. And we sit them down with a variety of platforms and ask them to achieve a bunch of goals, right? It's just user testing. And we watch very closely what they do, how they react. Now, we've been doing this for some time, and so we were able to tell with some precision how people's response and reaction to Ubuntu has changed over the last, say, 18 months to 2 years. And that change really is extraordinary, right? First, people are able to get more stuff done today with Ubuntu. With Ubuntu 11.10, they can get more done than they were doing with 11.04 and 10.10 before that. But more importantly, there's been this real shift. People would finish this program, this testing program, and essentially leave when we started. But today we often get a key question, which is, how can I get this on my own computer? And I think that's an extraordinary shift, right? People, when confronted with this, when shown this platform, suddenly start to relate to it emotionally. And I think the teams, and there are multiple teams that have worked on this initiative to make Ubuntu look and feel great, and they deserve your congratulations and support. In this release, in this latest release, I want to shout out to the work that Robert Ansel did on LightDM. Where's Robert? I think this work is going to pay off in multiple communities. I know there are conversations out there about having other platforms essentially use LightDM. It's lean, it's clean, and it's open. So it really allows any desktop environment to abstract away all of the complexities of login management and to focus on the specific experience that they want to create. I'm very proud that that came from this community. Thank you, Robert. We also saw some shiny new work in the Alt-Tab department. Where's Jason and the DX team on that? Busy working on 2.0. So this got a lot of comments on some of the blog sites that cover Ubuntu. So I just want to say thank you and well done to those guys. We also saw Music Lens land for the first time. This is the first of what will be a series of content-oriented lenses, right? Integrating content directly into the platform. The idea being that you should be able to get at whatever you want, whether it's online, whether it's on your desktop, whether it's in your private cloud, instantly from the desktop through a search-driven interface. So there's a lot of great work there. There's integration with Banshee, there's integration with Ubuntu One. So a ton of work went into this, and I just want to congratulate and thank everybody who made this happen. And finally, who's using Monospace? Yeah. So well done with Marcus and Paul Sladen. Thank you very much for this. It's been a huge hit. And I hope it will go up on both fonts.ubuntu.com and on the Google Font API and become the world's favorite monospaced font for those of us who live in terminals and other developer-oriented infrastructure. It's beautiful, it's completely consistent with everything that we've done, and it's really starting to help bring our platform neatly into focus. So that was on the client. What about on the cloud? Well, a huge shout out, on the other hand, to the OpenStack community. Where are they? We've got a bunch of folks from Ubuntu Server and a bunch of folks from OpenStack. Hello and welcome. Those of you who were there in Budapest, remember we had intense debates and discussion about whether we could, in fact, integrate all of OpenStack in one cycle and make it the cloud infrastructure of choice in Ubuntu. And it was a huge accomplishment. We could only have done that because of the exceptional focus that the OpenStack team brought to that and the collaborative nature of the conversation that we have. This is a first-class upstream. They work to a cadence. They have very clear goals. All of their stuff is open, and they engage. They've been wonderful to engage with. So from our side, it's a real pleasure to work with the OpenStack community. And I particularly want to credit the companies that essentially had the vision to create OpenStack, and Rackspace in particular. So one of my goals is that it should be really, really easy from the Ubuntu desktop, from any system administrator desktop, to deploy your own cloud using OpenStack, and then to burst when you need it up to the Rackspace cloud, because that kind of openness, that kind of commitment to a public community process deserves our support. So thank you to Rackspace and thanks to the OpenStack community. I think there are going to be a whole bunch of OpenStack-based clouds announced in the next 6 months. Some of you may have seen the announcement of HP making a public cloud available that is entirely built on Ubuntu and OpenStack. So a huge win for us, and I think a very significant step for HP and a pointer to multiple to how this industry is changing at multiple levels and in multiple ways. In Ubuntu, we have a really fantastic story for the cloud. We think of it as friction-free DevOps, right? In a traditional infrastructure deployment, you have multiple platforms, right? You've got developer workstations running one version of the OS, you've got test and dev running a different version of the OS, you've got production running a third version of the OS. That's typical in many legacy Linux environments. And it's that way because of economics, because of business models essentially by distributions. In the Ubuntu world, we don't have any of that friction, right? You can run one platform across developers, staging, test, production, and you can essentially engage commercially around your production pieces with Canonical and with Ubuntu Advantage. And that does two things. It means that all of the work that the volunteer community that participates in Ubuntu, all of that work reaches the widest possible audience, regardless of economics, regardless of commercial relationships, regardless of Canonical's position. That's really important. And on the other hand, it means that for the companies making those deployments, they have complete freedom as to how they allocate their resources and where they focus their commercial efforts. So we really are in a good position to be the platform of choice for the cloud. There are a bunch of things that we have done and more that we will continue to do to make sure that Ubuntu is both the best guest on any cloud and the best host for your OpenStack cloud. So the server team has done a lot of work around cloud init and around cloud guest technologies. They've also, of course, done all of the work around OpenStack. And I want to call out work that got done in the last cycle around large-scale provisioning. For a long time, we've set the goal that installing Ubuntu on either a server or a desktop should be a very simple proposition and should happen fast. And these guys took the challenge to say, okay, we now have it so you can install one server in a few minutes. How can we make it so that you can install 2,000 servers in a few minutes, or 20,000 servers in a few minutes? And in part, that's driven because we actually have people figuring out how to do those deployments for themselves. And they need the tools, they want the support. In part, that happens just because it's about bringing the Ubuntu ethic, right? Just works easily and just works fast to that whole audience of very, very large-scale server-side computing. So the orchestra team brought a design approach to it, pulled together the pieces, and in a very short period of time have delivered something really sweet, very, very well designed, very easy to use. So just a quick shout out to the server team and those who worked on orchestra. Thank you. ARM. Well, not only do we have a very significant representation at this event from an ARM-focused community, but I think it's fair to say that ARM is lighting a fire under many different spheres of the technology world today. We know that there are billions of ARM devices out there, but traditionally that was sort of a different world. Today, however, ARM is quite clearly having significant impact on big areas of the world that we've traditionally thought of as the PC world or the consumer electronics or personal computing world. What was particularly exciting in 11.10 for me was the huge leaps forward that got taken for the idea of ARM on the server. The server world is getting reinvented at two levels. One inside the data center, where it's all about density and all about horizontal scaling, right? So if you're building out massive infrastructures, I think ARM is going to have a major role to play in your plans in the next 5 years. I think we'll see product announcements imminently for new companies focused on helping people deploy ARM at scale in the data center. So it's work, for example, that we've done around ARM enablement with those server vendors and around, for example, allowing people to use cloud-style deployment approaches thanks to LXC containerization as a substitute for virtualization. So people are starting to look at how they can actually build clouds using 32-bit ARM technologies. We just saw the announcement of 64-bit ARM server parts, and those will be coming down the pipeline too. But I don't think industry is going to wait. I think we're going to see ARM in the server, in the data center, a lot faster than anybody might have predicted a year ago. So that's the one really exciting area. The other exciting area in which the data world is getting transformed is the Internet of Things. This idea that every single device out there, in your home, in your car, in the workplace, in industry, every single device out there, every sensor, essentially is no longer just a specialist device. It's running a full-blown operating system. It's talking to other devices on the internet. It's sharing its data. It's sending data, contributing data to the cloud. And Internet of Things, all of those things addressable, running real operating systems, running Ubuntu. And in both cases, I think ARM is really setting the pace. On the client, of course, we know all about ARM on the phone and in the tablet, but we just shipped the first clamshell device with an operator, Vodafone, a little laptop, a power-friendly, low-cost laptop, shipped initially in South Africa and soon more widely. So that's a major milestone on the client side as well. Okay, so this is an LTS release, and really LTS releases are about long-term relationships, figuring out what we have to do to make sure that we can have a long-term relationship with the people who are going to deploy this code at scale and the people who are going to care about it in 3 or 4 or 5 years' time. We announced that we'd be doing 5 years of maintenance on the desktop, so that's a substantial ramp up. And the driver for that was very simply, people are deploying it at such scale that 3 years isn't enough. And so that's both a really good sign, also a challenge. Today you can buy Ubuntu pre-installed from Dell, Lenovo, Acer, Asus, on PCs in various parts of the world. That list continues to grow, and the volume that is shipping with Ubuntu continues to grow. Those OEMs care about this, right? They have to ship Ubuntu to corporate customers and to institutions who have much longer timescales than our traditional audience. So Rick Spencer and Pete Grainer are going to talk about how we plan to achieve that, how we plan both to ensure the maintainability of this code base and also how we plan to address the #1 challenge that we have with LTSs, which is fresh hardware. I think the approach that they've come up with is brilliant. We put out an LTS release every 2 years, and we put out a non-LTS release every 6 months. And the idea, in essence, is to use all of the certification and enablement work that we do for those other releases to essentially power the point releases of our LTSs. So that means if your system works with a point release, it should also work with the latest LTS release, which is a huge leap forward for us. So I just want to thank them and ask you to look out for the plans that they will take you through in that regard. Another very significant focus for us in this cycle is going to be the move to the cloud and the move to defining services in the cloud. Today we work at the package level, but in future we want to work at a service level. And so Juju gives us a language for talking about services, right? Every service gets defined as what we call a charm. And so the equivalent in Juju language, the equivalent of package maintainers are Juju charmers. Our charmers in chief, George, the unstoppable George Castro, and Clint Byram, who's going to be here from tomorrow onwards. So if you're interested in this, please engage with them. This is really about distilling the expertise of DevOps into charms so that people can reuse and share that expertise, right? So that we can move up a level in the stack and bring the same kind of community governance to the cloud and to services in the cloud that we have for packages today. I'm often asked what the relationship is between Juju and configuration management tools like Puppet and Chef. And the truth is they work hand in hand together. So we've seen Juju charms that use both Puppet and Chef to handle the configuration management portion of service deployment. So this is a slightly different level of abstraction. For 12.04, we want you to be able to deploy Juju charms natively on your workstation. So you should be able to deploy your own app development, a 3-tier developer environment, for example, database, app servers, and load balancer. Write your code, test it all like that, and then hand it straight over to DevOps and have them deploy immediately. You're also going to see at some stage some concentrated work around the corporate desktop. As I said, we have institutions now rolling out deployments of thousands and thousands of units. And so what they've asked us to do is to provide them with a reference corporate desktop, which is essentially Ubuntu streamlined just for the business development or business deployment use case. Lastly, power users. Now there's a bit of a myth, I think, that power users aren't interested in usability and ease of use. And I think that's absolutely nonsense. I think power users, developers, engineers, system administrators love ease of use and love simplicity and love having things just work so that they can concentrate on the pieces that they need to get done. But they also do stress the system in all sorts of interesting ways. They may be multitasking much more heavily. They may be using screen real estate in slightly different ways. So we're going to do a whole program of effort in this cycle to make sure that the work that we've done on usability and ease of use ultimately ends up also supporting the work of power users. Now there's going to be a crowd that is just too cool to use something that looks really slick, and there's nothing we can do for them. Fortunately, in Ubuntu there's tons of other options, lots of choice, lots of ways to skin the cat, right? But what we want to do is make sure that our primary desktop offering is both easy to use, beautiful, and exciting for power users. If we could, it would be nice to get Linus and ESR in for some user testing. And if we do, I'm sure the footage will be widely available. We may mute the audio track. But that's a key goal for us in this cycle. And I think it's a goal that many of you will relate to and be able to help with. So thank you for that. Finally, there are tons of little things that we need to get right. Lots of bugs, multi-monitor support, lots of refinements on the design. This is one of those releases where we're going to need to put a discipline back in place around boot time, around power management. There is a ton to get done to make this the most pixel-perfect release of Ubuntu ever. Okay, so that's 1204. Lastly, what are we going to do for the next 2 years? Now, we set out with a mission which was Linux for human beings, to bring the power of free software to a global audience of users. And it's increasingly obvious that those global users don't just use desktops. We have a desktop, it's beautiful, it's powerful, it's starting to get widely adopted and widely shipped. And that's an enormous achievement and a milestone in its own right. We need to look forward, and it's increasingly clear that over the next 2 years we need to target a whole range of other devices where the next 2 billion real human beings are going to be doing their personal computing. So we have a challenge for you, and the challenge starts this week with a series of conversations as to how we in this community can make Ubuntu, and more broadly GNU Linux, relevant on devices like phones, tablets, and televisions. The future does not just belong to the desktop. The future belongs to an array of smart screens. You're going to want to, and your friends and family are going to want to work with every kind of screen out there. And the line between those screens is going to blur. Right? So in 2 years' time, we would like to have, and we believe we can have, Ubuntu running on all of these categories and all of these form factors. More importantly, we believe we can empower a huge explosion in innovation as people take a free software platform and innovate and create new kinds of categories. Once we have the basic framework in place for an all-screen push from Ubuntu. Now, this is why we call Unity, Unity. This is why we designed it the way we designed it. We knew from the very beginning that we were moving into a world of convergence between all of these form factors. It's not just about having the same code running on 5 different kinds of devices, though. It's also about thinking about a world where one device can have all of those personalities built into it, where you can take your most personal device, the phone, and dock it to a television and have a great TV experience. Take it from the television, get in the car, and work in the car the way you need to. Have all of your information handy. And then take that phone and dock it to another shell, use it as a tablet, dock it to another shell, and use it as a desktop. That's the challenge. We are in a unique position to do that because we have one core that runs across all the architectures that matter, one core that can service all of those user experiences. And in Unity, one framework that can deliver coherent user experiences across all of those. So that's the challenge. There is a great deal to discuss. We will have one session, I think, each day, opening up, kicking off the thinking around each of these form factors, to which I would invite you. There'll be mailing lists set up for each of those so that we can start engaging with folk. Your input to help shape the vision for Ubuntu across that full range of form factors is critical. So be excellent. Have a wonderful week. It's going to be a big one. And if I could ask you to focus on the whole experience rather than individual pieces, I think we will end up producing a much better product. There's one session, I think it's later today, where Oren will be talking about design journeys. We have so many intense conversations about specific pieces of the shell or specific pieces of the system. But ultimately, we need to step back and we need to ask, what are people doing with these devices? What are people doing? What do they have to get done fast? What do they have to get done regularly? And how are we facilitating that end-to-end experience? So I commend that talk to you and look forward to seeing what we all build in 1204. Thank you very much and have a great week.